Hello, everybody. Welcome again to the Brockton Bay Chronicles. We hope you're enjoying your summer. My name's Keith, back again with my friend Andy. We continue on making our way through his first time reading of Worm by Wildbow. Hey, Andy, what's up?
Well, I'm still trying to get over missing out on your epic barbecue. Definitely had flashbacks to 4th of July's in the days of yore, but
Oh, yeah.
other than that, I'm getting through it okay. I had a pulled pork sandwich at the park, and it was a poor substitute. But anyway, enough about that. This time we'll be reviewing Arc 16, Monarch, chapters 1 through 4, and the first interlude. As far as new business, just for your information, we'll be breaking Arc 16 review up into 4 parts. And the first group of questions and comments we'll be working on for next episode.
So since we're setting that aside for next episode, we will dive right on into our review. Starting off Arc 16, Chapter 1, and Skitter's holding a barbecue. We're picking up slightly after where Coyle makes it clear that he knows what the Undersiders were all about. And so Skitter's kind of given up on I guess at this moment, trying to rescue Dinah. So she, in order to make herself feel a little better, maybe not inflict, as she said, not inflict her discomfort on her followers, she's decided to throw a barbecue, and they've got quite a little setup going on. Being that this was the first time using my my new smoker, I could commiserate and relate to the fun time that those folks initially were having before things went south. Gru shows up. The two of them have a discussion. We do get, once again, during this arc, several instances of Taylor thinking about how important her image, what kind of image she's trying to project to her followers. But before we even get to that section, Skitter does look at the situation with her followers, how they've got a nice setup going on. They've kind of cordoned off an intersection. They've got food. They've got beer. She's decided that having the folks relax and have a nice time beats. There's nothing wrong with taking a day off since they've been going kind of full tilt since the defeat of the Slaughterhouse 9.
I think a barbecue makes a lot of sense. As we were discussing, there can be great memories from that. Although I think Taylor shows her kind of teenage worry maybe a little bit by saying she makes sure everyone only has one beer.
Mm-hmm.
That seems, I mean, I don't know, maybe their supplies are pretty short, but, I would think she'd have, a little bit of leeway on that. But anyway, that's just me reminiscing about when, I don't think one beer was anybody's limit, except for me that didn't drink at all, but more beer for everybody else, right?
Right.
But yeah, I think it's a good idea. People can only handle crisis after crisis for so long, and it's important to try to at least bring back a semblance of normality. So yeah, I like the idea a lot. I don't know about carrots in with the pork shoulder, but
yeah,
you're more of a cook than I am. So
yeah, I'm not seeing that. Grab yourself a brush and slather on a lot of barbecue sauce once that thing's falling apart and ready to eat. But anyway, she uses her swarm sense and detects the arrival of Gru. He comes over and they commence to talking. He's not really sure about the idea of having this kind of a social gathering, but she makes her case to him. I mean, on the one hand, she's trying to project an image to her followers, and on the other hand, she's trying to make sure people are not suffering just because she is. You think she's striking it sounds like you think she's striking a good balance, given the situation. Like you said, people can only be beat down for so long.
Yeah, I think people need to have something to look forward to, and everybody eats. And so, having time where you're smelling the food cooking and everything and building that anticipation.
Building a little sense of community, perhaps.
I think so, yeah. Getting a chance to chat with people, even if it's about, oh, yeah, you think the rats are big in your place or whatever it is, I know Skitter took care of a lot of that already, but, whatever is the local pain point in your neck of the neighborhood, and talking about that. People might have ideas on how to work around things, or where something's going okay. And so I think it's a really good thing, and people need a day off. So yeah, I think she's striking a good balance.
You think long term, if you had to guess, this kind of goodwill from the head of the area, you think this will have benefits, unforeseen benefits later on?
I think so. Skitter thinks about it a little bit as she starts walking away, and people kind of jump out of her way, or at least don't,
Right.
linger, don't give her a high five or anything, fist bump on the way through. So she's definitely got that kind of fear factor / respect, and she's not sure how much of a difference there is. So, you're never going to break down all the walls, and I'm sure you ran into that a little bit as a coach, that you can get close to your players, but in the end, you have to maintain that they're the
Yeah.
player and you're the coach.
Right.
And, there's never going to be a jump from that divide until the kid graduates. Maybe they come back as an assistant down the road or whatever. But there's always going to be that kind of dichotomy, that she's the boss, she's the parahuman, and they're not. But it never hurts to build goodwill, because people are going to make up their own stories about how villainous you are, how evil you are, unless you show them that you're not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, people tend to focus more on the negative. So the more you can have a kind of a positive event type thing, and build memories, you've got to do that when you can, to kind of combat everything else. And, it turns out that she's part spider herself, and she sucks the blood out of her victims,
Yeah.
they're going to make up all sorts of stories. Some people are. So you got to try to get the good PR to balance that out.
Did you come up with a name for her area? What was the one she threw out there as she was talking with Gru? Spiderville, the Bug Walk, the Hive. Anything come to mind pop in your head? Skitterville, I
you're,
don't know. Wasting
you're
away
gonna
again in Skitterville.
you're gonna hate this one, but
Uh-oh.
Roach Motel.
Oh, gee, dude, no, come
From
on.
back in the day. Yeah, the Roach Coach.
Oh
That's what
man.
that barbecue is called. The Roach Coach.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh gosh.
Yeah, Skitter's Web, maybe like Charlotte's Web. I don't
Oh,
know.
hey, that's creative. Yeah, I'm sure there's probably all kinds of good names floating around in the interwebs, so to speak.
Yeah.
We did get a nice moment between Gru and Skitter, aka Brian and Taylor, where they talk about their blossoming relationship and the possibilities, and kind of saying, "Hey, Taylor was pretty mature about it, and said, hey, things aren't always going to work out time wise. We'll fit each other in when we can." And Brian was like, "Hey, that you can say that now, but what happens when it's the third time or the 10th time?" And I mean, he's got a point that they live a pretty dangerous lifestyle, and they are working for a supervillain. So dating or relationships aren't going to have the normal hurdles to overcome.
And I think we as readers at least have seen that with a lot of the folks that were involved with each other, mainly on the Cape side. But I think, yeah, it's kind of like being a sports star, or being, even a first responder.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely like a celebrity. There's all sorts of weird schedules and requirements, and kind of back in the old day, the pager goes off and you got to go kind of thing. And
Right.
so,
And
yeah,
Taylor
that's going to
had
make it really hard.
and Taylor had was it last arc or at least last arc when not long after Brian had his second trigger, and she had done the calculus about the success rate or lack thereof of parahuman relationships. So this is kind of a continuation of that thought process, I think.
I agree. But, the flip side of it is that being a parahuman is inherently going to be a little bit lonely. You're kind of set apart already. and there's going to be stuff that other people aren't going to get. And so the only chance you have at kind of not being totally lonely is to bond with fellow parahumans, even though there's lots of risks and it's fraught with peril, as Monty Python used to say.
Mm-hmm.
You still got to, if you want to have someone in your life, it's pretty much got to be another parahuman.
Yeah, especially since you're going to be running in the same circles. As they're discussing things, Skitter invites Gru back to her place after the day's business is finished. He's actually seems like he's feeling better. Has his PTSD, I guess, is under control as necessary, and is going to go out on a patrol in his area. Turns out that Imp seems to be, and we saw this in the previous arc, it turns out Imp is really taking things seriously, and that as far as rooting out potential problems, and that kind of surprised Skitter a little bit.
Yeah, it's hard, I can remember back to when I was a teenager, and there were those people that were ahead of me on a maturity level scale, if you will, and then there were those that were behind me, and some of them that were less mature were older. It didn't seem to matter necessarily on age, but you always had this impression like, oh my gosh, are they ever going to grow up? Why are they still being a knucklehead like that? And so then when it happened, you're like, oh, well, I didn't expect that to just like flip a switch, but generally that's how it was. So yeah, I get where Skitter would be like, oh, cool. I hope it sticks,
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, as they're trying to make their plans for the evening and Gru's getting ready to head out, all of a sudden Dragon pops up and crashes the party. Fortunately for Skitter, Dragon's suit was just inside her range, and her bugs could sense the arrival of the new mech suit. Now we know, as we noted in the previous arc, that Dragon has some upgrades and has sent multiple suits around to different territories to harass the members of the Undersiders and the Travelers. This particular one, it was a drone deployer. This ended up being a pretty hectic scene, didn't you think?
Definitely, yeah. But before we get into that, I thought it was interesting the way Wildbow wrote. Skitter said, "I felt a tremor." You feel that? I asked, and he said no. And then she said, "No, I hadn't felt it with my own body. My swarm had sensed it." So I think it's even, that line is blurring a little bit more, where her consciousness, if you will, is extending out to the whole swarm, and it's the sensations are coming through, and her brain's just bringing them straight in without any, oh, the bug 53 over there on that roof felt something. It's just like, I felt something. So
right.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. When you mention it that way, it's no different than swiping at the mosquito that you felt land on your arm. And she's in the middle of a conversation, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, I felt that. And as you stated, she was not concentrating on this thing, on that area. She noticed it. She felt it. Her swarm sense has, well, I won't say matured, but it's continues to evolve.
It's integrated.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's slipped below the level of like conscious thought. It's almost subconscious now. Just like you said, just brushing against something on your face.
Yeah. Dragons set this thing against her. It was reasonable to believe that Dragon didn't expect Gru to be there, since this particular one was deploying drones. And these drones,
there were these ball drones,
right, and these drones had kind of a unexpected addition to them, and Skitter makes it clear that she really hates Tinkers.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty clear in the text there. I mean, no beating around the bush there with that one. Well, and especially, they don't know this, but especially Tinkers that don't need to sleep.
Right. Yeah.
And have a huge amount of processing power that's just cranking all the time. That is just so annoying. And all they're doing is, for all we know, it's like when they run the simulations for who's going to win their Super Bowl by playing Madden a million times or whatever. Dragon might have run a million simulations on what might work and what won't work and mapped out the area and stuff. And so definitely having Gru there throws a monkey wrench into things.
Yeah. And also, we know Dragon's true nature. Nobody else but Defiant / Colin does. Certainly not Skitter in them.
Exactly. Yeah. So now it's reasonable to think that, as parahumans get into their power more, that they may need less sleep or they have more energy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or a tinker might be able to make things that would then design and make other things. But yeah, they have no idea what they're up against.
Skitter tries to get a hold of Tattletale, and that conversation is interrupted by static, and they barely get to communicate back and forth before Dragon cuts off the communications. And it's Wildbow writes here, Skitter, it was Dragon who spoke over the phone. I'm cutting off communications. I look forward to talking to you once you've been brought into custody. The phone died. There wasn't even a dial tone. So, yeah, Dragon's there. She's cutting off communication. She's isolating people, and she's sending her mech suits to assault each particular territory. And that's where we get Skitter as we move a little further into the chapter, where Skitter's lamenting or stating her disdain for tinkers, especially those who share their technology. A couple of these beach ball-sized drones pursue Skitter and Gru, and we find out that Gru's power does something to him.
Yeah, that was interesting. I mean, it kind of makes sense, but yeah, I didn't really see that one coming.
If you think back to early on, might have been Arc 2, when Taylor joined the Undersiders, and Tattletale was talking about what Gru's darkness did. It wasn't just sensory deprivation. She speculated that it might have some effect against various segments of the light spectrum, radio or whatever, radio frequency or whatever. So perhaps this is one of those instances. I think Wildbow set the predicate during Lisa's speculation back then.
Now that you mention it, yeah, I do recall her saying something like that, and that, there might be additional attributes to the darkness that would be revealed or whatever might be coming in handy down the road. So
now Dragon had a counter to that, which during my first read I didn't see coming, and I was kind of like, oh, that's a problem.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. That hot wind blowing through and clearing everything out.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense, if you've got whether Dragon expected anybody to be there or not, she still has this plan of going after the Undersiders. And so she would have developed strategies against Gru.
Mm-hmm.
And it wouldn't be that hard to try to add secondary or tertiary defensive mechanisms or offensive units or tools to things on the off chance that other members of the Undersiders were encountered.
So here you have this mech suit. Dragon we know she's considered to be the most brilliant tinker on the planet, and she's now able to borrow technology from Defiant, who at one point in his previous life had gone toe-to-toe with Skitter.
Mm-hmm.
And their collaboration yielded some pretty useful tools for them to assault her territory. They got lucky and they got away and managed to make their way back to Coil's base. And everybody was there except for Bitch and Ballistic, I believe it was. Oh, and Genesis. Coil doesn't care. And he's like, look, I gave you guys a timeline. Y'all need to deal with this as I set out in this timeline. The team, the travelers are stuck. They're like, hey, we have to stick around and go through this. Imp tries to get something, as well as Alec. The one big thing, or Regent, the one big thing that Skitter wants, of course, is the release of Dinah. Why don't you take each of those individuals and the request one by one and tell me what you thought of each of those?
Well, Imps makes total sense. I mean, she's felt like second fiddle, but she's stepped up and is doing more, so it makes sense for her to have her own territory. And that's just kind of a coming of age reward, if you will. So that one makes sense. Alec, kind of surprised, but not. I mean, he just asked for more money.
Sure.
But, it seems like if he wanted, he could have an infinite amount of money. So I don't get where the accumulation comes in, but I don't really know what else he would want anyway, because he can manipulate people to do whatever he wants to. So it's kind of hard. What do you get for the parahuman who has everything?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then, yeah, it totally makes sense what Skitter says. Here she's got a chance. She felt like Dinah was totally off the table. Their plan had been discovered and they had no chance, but now there is a chance. So it's worth a shot.
As we're heading toward the end of the chapter, Coyle needs to converse with Tattletale, or let me say that Tattletale needs to get some more information from him in order to help set up a possible reply. So that takes us on, or a response, I should say, and that takes us on into the next chapter. And as the partial groups, the travelers and the undersiders are heading out to go face down Dragon at her various locations, try to rescue their teammates, Skitter takes point. You feel that this was realistic, the way that I think that Wildbow has been setting this up. He's given us, in my opinion, he's given us a pretty good setup for this particular moment where she takes point in setting up a strategy for dealing with Dragon.
I agree with that. And it's not like she's taking over as dictator.
Right.
She doesn't roll out this giant map and place units on it and then say, here's Operation Dragon Ball Z or whatever. She just she has her ideas. And because one of her powers is kind of like integrating information, integrating data, just like a hive mind would do. She's able to put out the seeds of things. And then as people say things, say, all right, well, what about, and massage it, manipulate it, form it into a cohesive plan. So she's really putting on, I think, more of, rather than, like I said, a dictator, more of an integrator hat, facilitator, saying, all right, let's all work on this. And then they come up with this pretty good plan.
Yeah, which I could relate to as a head coach, getting feedback from the primary parties and then coordinating your resources, which I think Wildbow does a very good job of putting Skitter in that position, looking at what's available to her, developing a cohesive plan, and then going out and executing it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. I do think it's interesting that so many of Skitter's plans kind of end up going on the slant of, all right, well, let's take it to the enemy. Let's
hit
it where
it
hurts, kind of things. Yeah. And, whereas bugs typically are, we're just going to hang out and do our thing until you kick the ant mound or whatever, and then we'll get mad. It's interesting that she's like that, but it makes sense, that she was bullied for so long and felt like
powerless.
She had no, exactly. And so now it's kind of like, all right, well, would it work if we turn the tables? Yeah, maybe. Let's give it a shot.
Is she? No, I'm not going to ask. Okay, that question doesn't make sense at this moment. I'll try to remember to save that. So, as part of her strategies that she's developing, she says that Imp plays a major role, to which Imp is fired up and ready to go about that. Trickster Trickster's got no respect for anybody but Trickster, it would seem. He doesn't think that she's going to be worth much in this upcoming battle.
And it's at that point that I wish Imp would, pants him or something, or, just do something, to be like, oh, yeah, you think you're all bad. How about this? You didn't see that coming, did you?
What are you doing walking around with your drawers down? What's the problem?
Exactly.
Jeez. And the whole group turns to him and looks at him. What are you doing? Put your pants up.
How did that? Yeah, man. Don't you belt? Ever heard of a belt? But I get it. Imp is kind of like an anti-hero, if you will. It's just like, all right, I don't know what she does, but man, it's an amazing tool that you can utilize in the right situation, and this is a perfect situation for it. Where you're basically doing the bait and switch. You're doing a big, hey, look over here. A big distraction and everything, and trying to draw stuff out. And then you've got somebody that's pretty much undetectable and nobody's going to remember going in and doing stuff. So yeah, it's pretty brilliant.
I think audacious could be applied to this plan that Skitter comes up with, wouldn't you say?
Oh, I would agree with that. That's a good word to put on it. Yeah. You're basically going into the lion's den. Yeah, audacious is a good word for it, for sure.
They had a plan, of course. No battle plan survives contact with the enemy.
Yeah.
But it was good. Swap Skitter into the building and then begin swapping heroes out, and then ultimately put Gru in there and have him borrow powers that he could use. When you look at it, when you step back and look at what it was meant to be, it was a sensible plan. But of course, things happen. She misjudged the amount of time that she had. The heroes inside the room begin to get a little bit of an upper hand. Oh, stepping back a little bit earlier in the chapter, when she was doing the bug reconnaissance with her swarm sense, before they actually began attacking the building. A lot of creepy critters going around inside the PRT headquarters, huh?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I thought of you in our old apartment back
right?
in college. I'm like,
exactly.
Man, you would never come to work again.
No.
Like, nah, I'm working remote.
Oh,
this place is foul. Okay. You need to get the exterminator. Don't we have an exterminator parahuman in here? Come on. Somebody. What are you tinkers? Hook us up.
Right.
World's largest bug zapper. Just turn it on for a week and then we'll come back.
Then we'll come back.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's pretty nasty in there, and that's all to Skitter's benefit.
Yeah.
I think she also makes great use of the capsaicin bugs and all the disabling type things where she's just really trying to overwhelm folks. And the teleport thing works great because as soon as it's like the ultimate tag team thing.
Yeah.
It's even better than that because you put a fresh body in there with something else to hit them with. And you can swap somebody who's about to do something against you with the other person. And all of a sudden, instead of where they think they were, they're now in the midst of this other thing. So it's pretty cool.
Jeez, think about this for a second. Man, if you could actually meld the Travelers and the Undersiders sans Coil into a unit, just imagine how powerful that team would be.
Well, and we haven't even got to Sundancer yet.
Right.
If she could not be so scared of her power a little bit, that thing could be a game changer by itself. I was just thinking about her. Well, just melt Dragon. I mean, don't even worry about kind of trying to keep her. Oh, it's too hot. Don't come over here. Just bloop it right on there, powerful group.
Yeah, exactly. As she's in the heat of the battle inside the office space with the heroes, several times her swarm sense saves her bacon from assaults from the no pun intended, assaults from the heroes. And Director Piggott makes an observation. She says here, after Skitter ducks an attack, says, prescience. Interesting, the director called out. As I ducked low and used the cubicles to hide. We assigned you a Thinker 1 classification, but perhaps we fell short. You agree with the director?
I mean, I agree that there are hidden depths to Skitter. I find myself having a really hard time after reading this section with agreeing with anything that Piggott says.
Really?
She just is, yeah, she just be getting more and more manipulative and throwing things out there just to get people to think things. And so, yeah, she's, if we have a new category for this arc, a most obnoxious person of the arc, then she's at the top of the list.
So the director tries to get Skitter to waver in her commitment to the assault that they're doing on the building. Hey, we've got more mech suits here. This was not the wisest thing you could do. And Skitter, what's she do? She uses her knife to slash a couple of X's in one of the screens and jumps out of it. That was gutsy. Jumps out of it and hopes that Trickster teleports her, which she does. And she repeats that act again. And then ultimately ending up in an alley with Clock Blocker, who's been frozen by his own borrowed power. And Gru is now gone. So again, yeah, there was a little hiccup in the plan, but they ended up apparently pulling it off. Well, that wasn't until Trickster got stuck in the foam. But go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, that made it difficult and really put a crimp in things. But to your point earlier about how a plan doesn't survive contact with the enemy, what the general counts on is that all the training that the troops have is going to allow them to improvise, adapt, and overcome. And so that's what these folks keep showing. I keep kind of minimizing it, I guess, in my mind, but they took on the Slaughterhouse-9.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like, I can't even come up with an analogy. It's kind of like Sam and Frodo going to Mordor. It's just, all right, you guys aren't even in the same weight class. There's a featherweight versus heavyweight here.
Well, hold on a second. This just occurred to me, and I don't know if everybody's going to agree with me or not, or I'm just now stating the painfully obvious. They lost that fight with the 9, but for Brian's second trigger. Is that just a painful observation that I'm just now getting in my second read?
Yeah, I guess that's a fair way to characterize it. But, even after that, there was the miasma, and they were still able to fight through that. And so, yeah, the second trigger was a little bit, what does my son call it? OP, a little bit overpowered, but
believable in universe, though.
For sure, yeah, definitely. And if it's an extreme crisis situation, you can't get much more extreme crisis than that,
right?
So, his teammates, his sister, the whole world, maybe all this stuff going on. He's been flayed alive. It totally jives that a trigger event would happen. The other option being that they would just die, but he didn't do that. So I don't know. You're right. Without that, I think that definitely tipped the scales. But the point is that whether all the dice rolled their way, they rolled all the numbers they needed at the exact right time or not, they still came through it. And that's going to give them a confidence and a swagger, if you will, and that ability to think, all right, this isn't going the way that we thought it would, but we can still make it work, and they'll find a way to make it work.
Yeah, and such has been the case so far. I think it was last episode I asked you if you had, pardon me, if you thought Skitter might be OP. And I wouldn't say that this, how am I going to phrase this? She's just highly skilled now in the use of her power. So this is a good demonstration of what she's capable of now that she, as you said, this thing is more fully integrated within her sense. It's operating at a subconscious level, which is why she's able to sense things, subtle shifts in body actions, and then duck before, a half second before a chair comes swinging at her head.
Yeah, I would say that although, yeah, Skitter is getting more and more skilled, she still has limitations.
Right. Right.
It's not like her bugs are 600 pounds and made of titanium. They get a little zap of electricity and they die, or they get too cold and they die. And so there's a lot there. Now, if we said, what if Dragon created a swarm of dragon bugs and sent them out, that I would say would probably be OP, because who knows which, they could all have little Dremel tools on them, or hypodermics or whatever, they could be, unbreakable, created in such a way like origami that you squish them and they pop back up or whatever.
Yeah.
So that would be OP. But because of the real world limitations on the bugs, I think that's always going to be a limiting factor for Skitter.
So the team finishes executing their assault on the building. They manage to get Trickster free from the containment foam, which one of the dragon models one of the mech suits was spraying out, and he got caught in. And she discovers something as they make their run for it. She discovers something in her hair. Turns out that she'd written a note to herself at some point, and she didn't realize it was in there. And the note had said to head down to the beach, where they met up with Imp and Director Pigott. That was a pretty clever way that scene was set up, don't you think?
Yeah, I thought that was pretty ingenious. It reminded me a little bit of that movie, I think, Memento. I don't know if you ever saw that one.
No, I never saw that one. Heard a lot about it, though.
It's a messed up movie, man. That was a brain bender, but the main point is that the guy doesn't have any short-term memory anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so he keeps having to make notes to himself, but then, he'll forget where he put the notes. So he has to tattoo himself.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty hardcore, and it's not like he's got a whole tattoo studio or something. He's doing it old school.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. But yeah, the note in the hair is pretty cool. And I think it's a great way to make sure that you don't lose track of what the plan was, even though the main person in the plan is somebody that their power makes you forget about them.
Right. Trickster, when they do meet up with Imp and Director Pigott, Imp says, "Hey, Trixie, there's no way you can disrespect me or underestimate me now." And Trickster says, "Hey, I won't anymore. Good job." And that takes us on as we head down to the end of the chapter, and they've got Director Pigott, and she's not a happy camper. She's this overweight woman. She's a victim of the capsaicin bugs, and Tag, you're it, Director. We've got you here. And that moves us on into the bonus interlude. And this one, how did you like this? Take a broad look at this one. I enjoyed it. Kind of unexpected. What were your thoughts on this one broadly, and then let's tunnel into it?
Yeah, all of Wildbow's interludes are kind of a grinding the gearbox shift a little bit, if you will, where it's kind of like, all right, that didn't sound right. I hope this is going somewhere, but as it got going, it was very well written, but super disquieting, very
good word,
off-putting. It's just it's like, oh my gosh, this is who comes up with this stuff? Oh wait, it's Wildbow.
Yeah, exactly.
But as it goes through it, yeah, then it's neat the way you see how pieces are fitting together. So he does a great job with that once again.
And what we've got going on here is it's February 2nd, 2001, and we are with a PRT squad. And they're on their way to a town called Ellsberg. Something bad has happened there. They've lost contact with the town. There's been some kind of Cape activity. We've got three squads of PRT and some Capes along with them, and they're looking for a guy named Rink. And they infiltrate the town. There's nobody around, and then suddenly this thing comes waddling toward the group that the captain is leading, and they think they've got it handled. They foam them, they flame them, and then all hell breaks loose.
Well, first off, this giant or whatever is pretty disgusting
Yeah.
in his own right. And as they were coming in, they noticed there aren't even any like birds.
Mm-hmm.
There's like nothing. And so that's very disquieting. You know, you're not sure what's going on.
No animals, no people, no bugs.
Right. And then, you know, as the thing comes around, they notice they get a heat signature, but it's not coming from the creature. It's coming from this giant bag that he's hauling. Then they kind of argue over tactics, and they're like, you know what? We just foam them and flame them. There's no interrogation here. We can't allow this to go on. And so they're trying to cook him down. And then he, you know, it's just one thing after another, but it is like, oh yeah, okay, that wasn't as bad as we thought. And then, oh wait, it's way worse than we thought.
Yeah, because going into this thing, I believe they had him as a changer, this Cape named Rink.
Right.
They had him, they thought he was a changer, but he ends up actually being a master. And things are so much worse than they expected. All three of the squads become under assault after they flame this first large creature, and it's just a brutal takedown of each of these units. I don't know if this was deliberate. I actually sent a note to Tony to ask him if this was a deliberate callback to, you remember in Aliens when the Marines went in and assaulted the nest underneath the air exchanger, that big fusion reactor. I don't know if that was a deliberate homage or inspiration from, you know, that Wildbow used to set this up, but that's the imagery I get here.
That is a good characterization of it. Yeah. I'm actually reading another book right now where these creatures are created out of blood. Mm-hmm. And so every time someone gets cut in battle and their blood hits the ground, then this power turns that into a new little like dwarf sized thing that has its own powers that then comes after you. And it kind of reminded me of that this master keeps using whatever biomaterial is around, it seems, to just keep making more crap and sending it at him. And it's pretty gross.
Yeah, it's just this hideous thing. This, once again, giving me Dean Koontz or Stephen King imagery here in the writing, you know?
Definitely. Yeah, that's another good one. Yeah, on top of that, it's not even like some external thing, you know, a gas or something like that. It's this thing that's a person or was a person generating all this stuff and, you know, thinking like it's a good thing. This is what their power is asking them or calling them to do. Mm-hmm. And it's just so twisted.
Yeah. Very disturbing. Very much like a bad car wreck. You're passing by on the freeway and you can't not look. The units are overrun. They're trying to mount a fighting retreat to to get to the chopper, so to speak. I couldn't help it. I had to.
Nice. Nice.
I had to. Anyway, and they're getting just struck down by these things. Some of them are spitting out bone shards or spears at him and taking him down. They're jumping over the walls of containment foam and attacking these guys. One of the dudes sacrifices himself using his grenade launcher when he gets attacked. 2 of the 3 choppers are down. The capes vacate the area. Not cool, huh?
Wow. I know this was earlier on.
Yeah.
So everybody's kind of getting a feel for their powers. And
it's a punk move. I don't care who it was. It was a punk move.
Well, you and I have kind of the same, run into the burning building mentality, I think. But yeah, this is just, that is very messed up. It's like, oh, hey, cool. You got superpowers. That means you can hightail it away when our butts are on the line even faster. Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for showing up and thanks for playing, and see you later. Bye. Yeah. These guys are dying. They're getting struck down. The point of view. Let's look at that. We don't really have a POV character in this interlude, do we? Did you identify one?
No, there isn't really like a narrator or somebody who's, it's all from their point.
Okay.
It's kind of like squad leader, where there's just, oh, let's switch to this group, and oh, what's that group doing? The center of the story is Nilbog, as we'll find out, but it's obviously not told from that thing's point of view at all. It's all the chaos swirling around it.
Okay, so it was the unit as a whole. It was their story.
Yeah, that's
this Rink or Nilbog. One of the I think it was the squad leader. I forget his name. He shoots the what they believe to be him. It drops, and Rink gets back up and starts screaming maniacally. You would shoot me, Rink roared. If anything, his voice was all the more terrifying because it sounded so small, so human. I create life. I'm a god. This is my garden. So this guy is clearly toys in the attic, in addition to being able to just create these horrendous creatures. The team leader ends up taking a spear to the chest, manages to get his few remaining squad members up on the chopper, and they take off. I believe Lady was the last one from his team. Fast forward as we head toward the end of the interlude. Fast forward, Lady's in the hospital, PRT hospital, recovering, and she's there with her roommate, one of the only other survivors, this Thomas Calvert guy. And he kind of lays down what happened. He was from squad number 3, and they were the only survivors. And he kind of brings her up to speed on what went down with her and the mission as a whole.
Yeah, it was just as bad for everybody as it was for her, it sounds like, and worse for a lot of others. And she didn't figure she'd be alive, but here she was. And yeah, the thing, Nilbog, not only creates things, but he creates things that then create other things.
Right.
And apparently he was wearing one of his creations, so that's what made him bulletproof and maybe fireproof. So they don't think they can bomb the place.
Yeah, because if they bomb it, they'll reproduce from flames. So another sick twist Wildbow throws at us.
I just can't even imagine that they're just saying they're going to wall it off and let him be his own little god. I mean, there's things worse than fire.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. Do you drop a neutron bomb on the place, or do you? I don't know.
Phosgene gas. I don't know.
Yeah, something. So we don't get an indication of just how big the town of Ellisburg is. So maybe walling it off.
Actually, it said it was like 5,000 people.
Okay. All right. So
like maybe it had a movie theater, but that was it. So yeah, you're not losing a lot by walling it off, but still, it's just the principle.
No, I hear you. So this Thomas guy heard the chief director discussing things with Lady's sister. She's pretty messed up. Her kidneys are gone. Her legs are pretty messed up from the attack. She's not going to be able to return to the PRT squad, and it sounds like they are going to. You can decide whether or not you think they want to keep her silent by her silence by promoting her, but it sounded like that to me. And this Thomas guy actually is kind of a dirtbag. It turns out he did. And again, I can't say it. I don't know if I'd have done the same thing in his situation, to be honest. But he pulled a pretty dirty move there to survive.
Yeah, I mean, he shot his captain. That was messed up. I mean, this is one of those horrible situations that they delve into in a lot of movies and stuff. And I think those of us who've never been in combat have no way to understand what it's like.
Exactly.
But even the few like scuffles, I don't know if I call them fist fights, I got into junior high or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how amped up and how your adrenaline gets going, and how once the fight or flight thing kicks into fight, it's kind of, I don't want to say berserker level, but it's just, yeah, all the rational thought, it's easy for it to just start slipping away pretty fast. And it just becomes kill or be killed. And yeah, here he just killed one of his own people to make sure he got up the ladder. But I think Wildbow does a good job of feeding that into Pigot's worldview. At the end there, monsters, freaks, lunatics, and bullies, the labels didn't belong to just the Capes.
Mm-hmm. It's like the world's gone mad and I'm the only sane person left.
Right. So, there's all these different reactions that people have from going through this crucible, and hers is to just say, everything is effed up and I have to fix it,
mm-hmm.
and nobody else can do it. And so she just gets this attitude. And I don't know, like you said, maybe it's buying her silence to a certain extent, but at least in the regular military and definitely in the elite groups, they do all sorts of psych analysis on folks. And they may have realized that by putting her in a position of power, that would feed into her strengths or particular attributes or whatever, and that would get her to be silent because she's in service of the greater good.
Yeah.
I'm the only sane person. I've got to try to bring sanity to the world.
Yeah, as we finish the interlude, move on to the next chapter. We're back with the squad. We're back with Taylor and everyone, and we've got Director Pigot there. And they've got their hostage, and they're trying to decide what they're going to do with her. Trickster wants to use her phone to try to contact Tattletale to see if she's gotten any new information. They debate whether or not that's a good idea. After some back and forth, they decide that they're going to take a chance. Gru makes the phone call. Sundancer and Trickster step themselves aside, and Pigot is left there with Taylor and a couple of the others, and she commences to skillfully mentally dissect them.
Yeah, and I'm with Imp. I think they should have just gagged her right off the bat, because oh man, this gets so annoying right now, with the way she keeps trying to twist things, and again, viewing everything from I'm saying you all aren't,
mm-hmm.
and your feeble attempts are annoying. Just let me go and I'll fix everything, kind of thing.
Yeah, so it turns out that the promoting her to director to quote unquote buy her silence actually ended up being a decent thing. Like you said, maybe they realized that she could still have some benefit to the system, and clearly she has. She's got a skill set being in charge of the local team and trying to sell capes to the civilian world was something she seemed like she was decent at. She ran a pretty tight ship, I guess you could say, until Leviathan came to town. And now she's just taken a scalpel to Skitter's ego at the moment. She's really, And further on in the chapter, she does the same thing to Tattletale. We find out a little more information about her. Wildbow does a good job of writing this kind of verbal jousting back and forth between people.
I think he does, but I really have to take exception with what the director says to Skitter. I got way too mad as I was reading this section.
Uh-huh.
And, they're talking about how the Protectorate can't allow the Undersiders to try to control territory because they're villains and they're hurting people. Mm-hmm. And so Piggott brings up what Bitch has done. And Skitter says, well, we changed things so that she's not in contact with folks as much. And Piggott says, I suppose that's consolation. And Skitter says, I'm not saying we're perfect, but we're doing something. And Piggott says, so are we. Skitter says, you're not doing enough. And then Piggott tries to justify that, okay, even if they're not doing as much as the Undersiders have all these problems. It's like, hold on a minute. You were supposed to be the face of justice and
law and order and all that.
Law and order and everything. And your bar is that so are we. We're doing something. It's like, no, that's not even close to being good enough.
I hear you. But Skitter she was not equipped to deal with this conversation. She was in over her head. In the end, and I think that's a little later in the chapter, I may be skipping ahead. In the end, she equates Director Piggott to her former principal at her high school, a person who was in charge of the system, and the system was a failure, and this person, by extension, was a cause of a lot of my problems.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go off on a little bit of a rant here. That
go for it.
A lot of our systems are set up this way. People talk about how this party is bad or this party is bad in the government, but all of them have a vested interest in making sure stuff doesn't get fixed. Mm-hmm. Because if it doesn't get fixed, then they can still keep pointing to either the other people blocking them from fixing it, or that there's some group that makes it too hard to fix. Mm-hmm. I think I've shared this before, maybe even in this podcast, but I know I shared it with you before, where, in a recent election, they were talking about how the major things were controlling the border, energy prices, and gay marriage, or, things other than heterosexuals. And a friend of mine said he was watching an old TV show called, what was it? Greatest American Hero? Was that it?
Yeah.
And he said there was like a governor's election and a debate going on, and those were the same three topics they were talking about from like the early 80s.
Yeah.
And so like 40 years later, people are still debating the same things. And the reason is that they aren't doing anything to fix any of them or address any of them. It's just, we'll push the needle a little bit this way, but don't push it too far so we can push it back a little bit so we can all stay here and get paid and not have to do our job.
Yeah, I hear you.
And the principal and Piggott seem like the same thing. They have a vested interest in keeping things the way they are. If Piggott was able to wipe out the villains, why do we need the PRT anymore?
Yeah.
And so it's very discouraging and disappointing. But the people who tend to get in these roles are the ones that want to keep the wheels turning, keep the rats on the in the maze, keep the hamster running the wheel, and not helping the hamster live a normal life, So anyway, end of rant.
No problem. I'm applauding you, buddy. I'm applauding in spirit there. So, as I said, she does get under Tattletale's skin. The team meets up with Tattletale, and we find out, at least from we can accept this from the director. Her name is Sarah. And she's got parents who are still looking for her. And the directorate paid money out of her own salary to get some of this information. She'd been looking forward to this opportunity to verbally fence with Tattletale and get under her skin. She's trying to get a sense of the group. She's a professional, and she's probing, finding weaknesses, looking for opportunities to try to turn them against each other. Now, she's a grown woman who's been in this line of work for however many years, and these guys are teenagers, most of them. And so, yeah, she's got the advantage of training and age, but they do recognize what she's doing, and they try to come up with a way to deal with it.
It's really tough though, and besides the training and kind of the mentality for it, Pickett has been around capes and parahumans for decades now and learned all the buttons to push and the fears and weaknesses that parahumans have, the things that they have to give up or the things they have to change in their lives. And so she's a master puppeteer kind of with these folks. And as you said, they're all teenagers, and it's a tough battle, definitely. And even as adults, we sometimes have trouble dealing with emotions that are brought up when we're triggered with something, not in the worm sense of triggered, but it's even harder when you're younger, because you're still grappling with who you are in some cases. And so,
right.
I mean, I get where she's coming from, and I get she's just trying to win, but it's pretty low blows from the director to add it up to her long black list of items for me, all the negatives in her column.
Yeah, no Christmas card for the director from Andy. Okay. All right.
You heard it here first.
So Pigot's actually not without a card to play in this situation. As the Undersiders and Travelers are debating what to do with her, discussing the fact that time is against them. They've got to deal with Dragon. They've got to rescue their teammates and get this all handled by Coil's deadline. And obviously, Pigot's not cooperating. And then she drops the bomb on them that she's actually dying. She needs continuous medical treatment due to her injuries. So she doesn't share that with them, but due to her injuries from that fight in Ellisburg. And hey, guys, just so you know, get me back to my house by midnight so I can get my hemodialysis, or I'm gonna die. And then you'll be killers. Surprise.
Well, yeah, I saw this as a pretty lame play, and I thought of all the things that Wildbow and the Undersiders lay out, and they check them off as not being options. But I think for sure they could have got Pickett to Coil, and he could have rigged up something. And I think that would have worked pretty well on a lot of levels. It wouldn't have solved some of their immediate problems, but in more long range thinking, that would have given them time for Regent to do his thing. And I think there could have been a lot of pluses for that.
So you think it was a mistake for the Undersiders and company to not take her into Coils? That's what you're saying? I mean, to get her medically treated there and then make her Coils hostage. You think it was worth that risk? Because, I mean, Coil being under the radar, that's been his whole thing. If they'd have gone all the way to him, they would have been exposing his entire operation to her. You think it was worth that risk?
Well, I guess there's always the chance that she might have had something that, like a tracking device kind of thing or some kind of phone home type thing. But yeah, I think so. I think
okay.
They could have called Coil. He could have said, all right, take her here. We'll put her in a Faraday cage. No sound will come out. We'll put a bag over her head, whatever. We can
get her medically treated.
Mitigate. There. Yeah, get her medically treated and then crack her. But maybe this is just my extreme antipathy toward the director. I don't know.
I hear you. What did you think of Regent's idea? He says, as they were debating their options, he's like, hey, we could just say screw it and go rescue bitch and leave town. Why stay here and finish working for Coil?
Well, was
that realistic on his part?
I would say it's very in character for Regent to say something like that.
Okay.
but I think it is very unrealistic. I mean, Coyle already knew that they were going to try to break with him, and he set up this whole thing to show that Tattletale's powers could be subverted or bypassed. And so, I think trying to just leave Coyle is
Not
kind of a hopeless
realistic.
situation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they know too much. He could probably take him out, especially once Dinah. Well, anyway, that's a whole set of speculation we don't even have to worry about because that's not what they do. They do glean a little bit of information from her, and then they shove Imp's sock in her mouth and bind it with spider silk. Yes.
If only they had dipped it in the slime on the floor first. But anyway,
dude,
I'll take what I can get. I'm not a fan of the deed.
Apparently not. She is not high on Andy's nice persons list. That's all right. She is who she is, and she does where at that one section that I can't find it where she talks about when Tattletale says how would you like me to dissect you, and the director's like, go for it. I wear my imperfections on my sleeve. There's nothing you can say that's going to hurt my fifis, so to speak. I'm overweight, I'm sick, I'm ugly, I'm all these things that you parahumans look down upon, and you can't hurt me with this because I wear it like a badge.
Yeah, I get. I mean, those are the obvious ones, but like I pointed out earlier, this trying to say, well, we're doing as much as you are, villain group is just so pathetic. It's just like the United States claiming, oh, we're doing just as much as this poor charity group to help people overseas or whatever. It's like, yeah, you're the amount of debt we have in the United States is greater than, it'd be enough to feed everybody forever. And here you are saying, oh, but we're keeping up with the Red Cross. It's like, come on, how is that even legit? So I think they could have taken her down a peg by showing how pathetic her arguments were, but you can't expect teenagers to come up with that. So
yeah. Tattletale does get information about the various suits that are in Brockton Bay. Now, I believe we know that there's 7 that are in the city. The director tells her the names of each, and then Tattletale asks each of the team describe the suit that attacked their area, and they determined that apparently at this moment, nobody's seen the Azazel, which is a brand new design that I believe the director says is here it is, the first truly original suit that she's made in 4 years, referring to Dragon. And plus, with Defiant's help, there's no telling what this puppy could look like.
Yeah, I'm waiting with bated breath on this one. It's going to be pretty impressive.
So as we're heading toward the end of the chapter, the team decides to split up, divide their forces. Some of them are going to ballistics territory, and Skitter and the others are going to Bitch's territory down at the train yard. So that moves us into the final chapter we're going to cover this time out, which is chapter 4. As they're trying to figure out an effective way to move quickly to Bitch's territory, they end up coming up with this sled the sled ride thing. Gotta admit, I had fun visualizing this in my head there.
Well, and I love the term you came up with it too, ground surfing.
Yeah.
I was thinking, was surfing the ruins, but yeah, that's pretty apropos. And that must have been, I mean, I've done something a little bit similar to this. Back when I was a kid, I lived in a mining town, and they had these giant dumps of tailings and stuff. And after it rained, it would get pretty slimy. And one time we we got a piece of corrugated tin and bent it and like toboggan down one of these probably toxic waste piles. I probably glow in the dark now and I don't even know it. But yeah, I got imagine getting towed behind, standing on a door. Oh man.
Imp and Region are living the life and having a good time, and
they're whooping it up, yeah.
Yeah, Skitter's at one point is like thinking to herself, "What in God's name was I thinking? Submit."
Yeah, you picked the teams and
exactly.
you ended up with these two.
I put these guys with me, and now I'm paying for it.
Right.
They get to Bitch's territory, and she and her team are in the middle of a fight with one of the dragon suits. Bastard and Bentley and Sirius are there, but only Bastard and Bentley were at size and fighting. Barker and Biter are there, and they're doing their best. And at first, Skitter doesn't understand. Hey, are we getting there at the end of the fight? This mech suit looks pretty beat up, and Bitch tells her this thing won't die. It won't die. It seems like they've been at this battle for some time, and they're not able to knock it down. Finally, at one point, we see what's going on with this thing. Pretty cool description, pretty cool idea that Wildbow comes up with for dealing with or describing this suit and how it functioned.
I thought this was excellent. Yeah, it reminded me of that. I think it was a game. Oh, I don't know if you ever played that game. There was one game I played where you had a machine that got sent in and it could make other machines by harvesting raw materials.
What, Total Annihilation?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, we played that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did for a little bit, yeah.
And it's so it kind of made me think of that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is a neat twist, and it, as Skitter points out later, this is the perfect antagonist for Bitch.
Right.
Because it's like that. I know you have a dog. It's like that Kong ball. You put some peanut butter in it. The dog can't chew it up and will never put it down.
Yes, and so Defiant suggesting this suit for her to combat Bitch. He was fighting against her innate nature, her canine nature, if you will, in that she could not retreat against something that she felt they should be able to ultimately defeat. And so it ended up being a heck of a poker move from that standpoint.
Yeah, this is a perfect match for Bitch. Bitch is just eventually going to tire herself out, just like that dog playing with the thing. Eventually it's just going to drop it and fall asleep. And so it takes Skitter to finally get through to her to say, well, all right, you're not a dog. You're a person. So let's just look at percentages here. It's not about whether there's a total victory or a total loss. It's how many times have you knocked it down all the way? And finally that seems to get through.
Right. And that's a result of the time that Taylor/Skitter has taken to get to know Rachel/Bitch. This is the kind of scene where that stuff pays off.
I agree. And I think there might be another aspect to it in that as Taylor has learned to integrate and understand various insect minds, it's given her insight into how other minds work as well, and that to be able to pick up on things and put two and two together and say, oh, well, yeah, the dogs are going to see, the pack is going to see any threat that can keep getting up as a threat that could come back to haunt them. So they're not going to give up until it can't get up. And I'm going to have to show her that that's not the goal here. We got to just take the victories that we can and then run.
I'm looking for that one section where Bitch says to Skitter, do like you always do, come up with a plan so that we can win this thing. That's a pretty good endorsement from her to a vote of confidence in Skitter.
Yeah. And I think
an acknowledgement.
Exactly. That's a good way to think of it, and in a pack, even though there's the lead dog, there's usually an acknowledgement that one might be faster or one
Mm-hmm.
might be better at squirming between boulders or something. And so I think it's bitch saying, all right, you're not the top dog here, but I acknowledge that you've got your own strengths, your own
Mm-hmm.
positive attributes, and I expect you to put them to use right now.
Yes, yeah, and she does, and she comes up with a plan. Again, Field Marshal Skitter getting the job done, looking at the resources that are available to her, looking at the battlefield, and then coming up with a way to, in this instance, coming up with a way for them to safely retreat, using her spider silk as much as possible, trying to keep the mech suit away from any metal. Which, I mean, they're in a train yard, and bitch has a point. It's not like you can easily easily keep this thing from ripping up rail or anything like that. But they end up wounding or damaging this thing to the point where they can make a retreat. How about that plasma spray that this thing vomited forth?
That was wild. Yeah, I didn't really get that. I really was with Skitter where she was questioning, okay, is it really okay to send out electrified napalm where people live? Isn't that kind of not a dragon's thing? So it was a little bizarre. I was pretty surprised at that. But,
She
Skitter
did think
clues
it
in pretty
through.
quickly that,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, she puts it together again and says, oh, well, that's why it's happening out here in an abandoned train yard. There's really very little chance of collateral damage. And so she can cut loose a little bit more with her weaponry. Dragon, that is.
Yeah, and she even posits that perhaps when Biter was on the mech suit and the mech suit had heated up, Skitter speculated that that Dragon would have shooken him off the suit before it became so hot that it burned him to the
Mm.
point as it was life threatening. So Skitter sees something in the way that the suits are operating.
Yeah, they're definitely non lethal as much as possible. And, she remembers that in the past, when the things have happened, the suit has definitely pulled its punches or dragons pulled its punches. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, she figures that that's still the case, even if it doesn't seem like it when the blue plasma comes flying out.
I mean, the plasma was aimed at barring their escape because it was like the moment they talked about, hey, this is what we're going to do to retreat,
Mm,
then that's when that came forth.
right.
Bentley's kind of hurt. He didn't move as fast as necessary to release a grip on the mech suit, so he gets burned. And now we're just down to Bastard, and she tells Bitch to grab something, have him grab something, and turns into a little jousting tournament. Knocks the mech suit down. Shatterbird sends some glass into the internal gears, and then uses the melted glass, to of reduce its mobility and then fling it back and forth. Pretty cool, pretty cool. I wasn't sure I bought it my first read, but I kind of understood what happened now this second time through.
Yeah, it was interesting because when the glass was in shard form,
Mm-hmm.
she had a certain level of power for over it, but then it melted
Yeah.
and that caused problems. It wasn't near as it didn't work with Shadowbird's power near as well. But then it cooled down again, and then it made even more problems for Dragon's suit because
Right.
once it hardened, it had flowed, right? It had gotten in the
Mm-hmm.
gears even worse. And then once it was hard again, then Shadowbird could use it even better again. So it was an interesting back and forth there that you didn't really see coming. I didn't see coming.
They win. They defeat this thing, and Bitch proclaims their victory over it. As they're retreating, and Skitter's using her bugs, her swarm sense to find out what's going on with the mech suit. it seems like the suit's down for good. But she doesn't want to tell that to Bitch because she doesn't want to feed her false information. I mean, Dragon's suit could. She makes a good point as she's thinking to herself that the suit could perhaps it splits off like it did against Leviathan, and a smaller unit comes free. So, but using the canine psychology card, playing that with Bitch, she gets her to take the victory, and the team moves on. They head over to ballistics territory, trying to find the rest of the team. I believe we are heading toward the end of the chapter, and this is where we get one more look at Skitter's relay bugs, which are sadly they're dying. They're at the end of their life because, as you recall, Panacea didn't give them a digestive system, so they're starving to death, and there's not much she could do to them. She could get some final usage out of them. She has them carried to the extent of her territory, of her range. She gets another range boost, and that's where she discovers what she believes to be the Azazel suit.
Cliffhanger, definitely. They flipped the last card, and it was not the one they wanted.
No, not at all.
This could be really bad.
With regards to the digestive system thing, I mean, time was short. We think back to that chapter, that moment. It was Skitter's focus was on saving Atlas, which was the right move. Gru was able to successfully borrow a little bit of Panacea's power, and at least enough to give him a digestive system. And the relay bugs, we don't know if we'll see them again, but for the time being, they're on their. It looks like they're on their last legs, but they fulfilled another use this time out, and she was able to extend her range and see what they think is the Azazel suit. So that's where we are going to end, coming up against what could be the biggest mech suit challenge they've faced so far.
Yeah, this one could be bad. Hopefully they'll have everybody together though, so it'll be a little bit better, even match.
Yeah, I think they're going to need everyone to deal with this. So we will see what happens. And that's it for this episode. This is the end of part 1. In part 2, in part 2, we will review chapters 5 through 7 in the next interlude. So we hope you will join us for that. And with all that said, we will be signing off for now. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate you for joining us each episode. Please stay safe. Please keep hydrated. It is hot summertime after all. And until next time, take care.
Not to make you feel bad, but I think the high here was 75. So,
oh, dude.
Yeah, I'm sure that was lower than your low, but it's been an amazing, beautiful summer here. But yeah, hydration is always key. Be sure to tune in next time and see how Dragon's newest creation does against the combined strength of the Undersiders and whoever else they can pull in to help them. And thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us in this podcast. We hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. If not, thanks for stopping by anyway, and we'll hope you'll return. Music is by the band YYNOT from their self-titled debut CD. You can find more in the link down below. Catch you later.